Let's talk about November 22nd, 1963. On that day, an event unfolded in Dallas, Texas that would go on to become probably the most analyzed, most contested homicide in modern history. The assassination of President John F. Kennedy. It wasn't just a crime, it was a shock to the entire system. It exposed these deep cracks in America's institutions and really it forever changed how people felt about their own government. To really get why, we have to go back to that fateful day.
So what was the president even doing in Texas? Well, it was a political trip. He was there to try and smooth things over in the state's Democratic Party before the 1964 election. Now, the motorcade route through Dallas, it was actually published in the local papers days ahead of time. It was designed for people to see him. But that decision put him in a vulnerable open-top limousine on a path that literally the whole world knew about. And just like that, a routine political visit turned into a national tragedy in a matter of seconds.
The timeline of that day is just a stunning picture of pure chaos. I mean, think about it. At 12:30 p.m., shots ring out. Just 30 minutes later, half an hour, President Kennedy is pronounced dead. Less than an hour after that, by 1:50 p.m., police have their main suspect, Lee Harvey Oswald, in custody. And only 2 hours and 8 minutes after the first shot was fired, a new president is taking the oath of office. The very foundations of American power were shaken and completely reset, all in the span of a single afternoon.
Now, in the middle of all this national grief and confusion, the authorities, they moved incredibly fast to establish a clear and, a simple story. The goal here was to restore public confidence and to just put an end to all the swirling rumors that, remember, at the height of the Cold War could have led to a major international conflict.
The way events unfolded, it almost seemed to wrap everything up with this shocking finality. First, Oswald gets arrested, and not just for JFK's murder, but also for killing a Dallas police officer, J.D. Tippit. Then, in a moment that was just seared into the nation's memory, Oswald himself is murdered live on television by a nightclub owner named Jack Ruby. So to try and calm the chaos, President Johnson sets up the Warren Commission, and 10 months later, it delivered its conclusion.
And right here, this is the core of the official story. The Warren Report's finding was completely unambiguous. Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Jack Ruby acted alone, period. There was no conspiracy. This was the answer designed to close the book on the whole thing, to calm a grieving nation and tell the world, hey, we're stable. But for a lot of people, this simple conclusion just created way more questions than it answered.
And it was right here, in the nitty-gritty forensic details, that the official story really started to fall apart. This seemingly straightforward idea of a lone gunman began to just crumble under the weight of its own contradictory evidence. And it all started with the bullets themselves.
At the absolute center of the Warren Commission's findings is this idea, the single bullet theory. You might have heard it called the magic bullet theory by critics. It proposes that one single bullet went into Kennedy's back, came out his throat, and then went on to hit Governor Connally, breaking his rib, shattering his wrist, and finally ending up in his thigh. Now, this theory wasn't just, a possibility, it was an absolute necessity. It was the only way to make the lone gunman scenario physically possible, given how long it took to fire Oswald's rifle.
But the problems didn't stop with the ballistics. You have this massive conflict in the medical evidence. Okay, so in Dallas, the experienced trauma surgeons, the ones who tried to save the president's life, they reported a small, entry-like wound in the front of his throat, and a huge, exit-like wound in the back of his head. This suggests a shot from the front. But then the official autopsy, done later at Bethesda Naval Hospital, concluded the exact opposite. All the shots came from behind. The question is just staring you in the face. How could two different sets of medical experts see such radically different things?
So the questions just keep building, and they go beyond just the forensic evidence. They lead us to this really paradoxical guy at the center of the case, and to the official investigations that came after, which, instead of giving us any clarity, just seemed to make the mystery even deeper.
Lee Harvey Oswald was, he was a walking contradiction. Here's a former US Marine who defects to the Soviet Union at the absolute peak of the Cold War. Then he comes back to America, becomes this loud pro-Castro activist, and just a few weeks before the assassination, he visits the Cuban and Soviet embassies in Mexico City, which was a known hub for intelligence agencies. And what we later found out from declassified documents is that the CIA was absolutely monitoring him, yet they held back key information even from their own people after the assassination. The question is, why?
And this doubt wasn't just among the public. In 1979, another official government group, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, re-examined the whole case. Using new acoustic analysis of a police recording from that day, they came to a completely different conclusion. They found a high probability of a fourth shot, one fired from the grassy knoll in front of the limousine. So they officially declared the assassination was likely the result of a conspiracy, directly contradicting the Warren Commission.
This official disagreement, right? Plus the conflicting evidence in Oswald's bizarre history, it did more than just fuel decades of skepticism. It planted the seed of distrust in our institutions that would just grow and grow through the jungles of Vietnam and the scandal of Watergate. It became a defining feature of the American landscape. The real legacy wasn't just losing a president, it was a deep, profound loss of faith.
So public pressure, which was really turned up by movies like Oliver Stone's JFK, led to the JFK Records Act of 1992. This forced the declassification of millions of pages of secret documents. And the hope was, okay, finally we'll get a clean answer. But the exact opposite happened. The records revealed this huge, murky world of Cold War plots and intelligence agency cover-ups, all these patterns of official secrecy that made the event seem even more complex, not less.
And that's really where we're left. The assassination of John F. Kennedy stopped being just a historical event and became this cultural symbol. The simple story they gave us back in 1964 was just too neat, too clean, and it left a vacuum. And that void was filled by decades of questions, of theories, and this persistent feeling of uncertainty that continues to haunt the American psyche. It leaves us with a question that is just as relevant today as it was back then. When an official story fails, what fills the void?